Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. So I feel, yes, I feel honored that somebody came in to listen to my story. Thank you very much, Afia, for inviting me and organizing. So I will be doing kind of a mix of sharing screen and just talking myself. I'm not gonna do lots of slides or something, but I will show some just main points also to keep track for myself and let's say to help the conversation. But I also expected more also to answer maybe some questions than just for me to keep talking. So I'll share my screen. And, so basically, this is what I want to talk about. So basically, I will tell a little bit my personal story, where I'm now in terms of my business and where I want to go. Then I will share some things which I think went well for me for running a startup, and also share mistakes which I think should be avoided. And this comes from personal experience and also from, let's say, experience for people I see around me. Because I spend lots of time talking to people about entrepreneurship. I'm very passionate about the subject in general. I try to help people also as a mentor, and also in my line of work where I teach sometimes people finance. I meet entrepreneurs. And finally, at the end, I will talk a little bit more about business in education, because I think it's a little bit separate field, and what I found makes educational industry, let's say, different from other industries I know personally. So basically, if I start about I start with a personal story, so I won't be sharing much for now. So I'm Lena, I'm 43. I was born in Russia, and I started my business studies in Russia, back almost in Soviet Union. But then I also had a double degree with the Netherlands, so big part of my studies I did in the Netherlands. And immediately after studies, I stayed working in the Netherlands for Dutch premium beer producer. So it was a big brewery producing beer, where I then I worked there for 10 years, and I was responsible for sales and marketing of beers, first in Eastern Europe and then in Latin America. So it was, it's a relatively simple product. No, it's a beer. We sold it in big quantities, full containers. It was shipped to different countries, but then it was our interest to make sure that this product actually had to be sold there locally. So it was relatively easy to sell a full container to some distributor in a certain country, because it was an attractive product. But it was quite challenging to make sure that this product actually gets sold by the final consumer, and it was in our interest. So in that field of work, I traveled a lot. I went to each country. I met with all the distributors. I helped distributors to to sell our product. So I was fortunate to see lots of small and middle-sized businesses locally and see how they run businesses. And also, unfortunately, I saw lots of businesses failing. So I saw a couple of very professional organizations, which would be food and drinks distributors running very sophisticated operations, but I also saw lots of small and medium-sized businesses struggling and going bankrupt. And that was it was always very emotional, and it was quite sad, because basically in a term of 1-2 years, you could see company starting enthusiastically doing things, but then failing to sell enough, and failing to run successfully cash operations, because at the end it was about the money, and actually the more successful companies become, the more cash they needed, and it was not possible to receive on time, so they would go bankrupt. So that was interesting experience, and then after doing this for 10 years, I went to do my MBA, Master in Business Administration. I did it in Barcelona in ESE Business School, which is a very, let's say, famous institution in its field. So in Europe, it is considered kind of one of the, like a Harvard of Europe. It was 2 years, very intensive studies, very competitive, very, let's say, hard work, lots of business studies, preparing me to be maybe a strategy consultant or working for investment bank, this kind of knowledge. And also there was lots of classes for entrepreneurship. So we studied a lot about finance. So then I could understand what was happening to those companies which went bankrupt. So now I knew, let's say, how it works in numbers and what was happening. So I got the theory to the, let's say, practice what I saw. And we learned a lot about strategy, markets, and everything. So basically, I don't tell it to you to brag, but I just want to give you a background so that I have lots of theoretical knowledge of how businesses are run and what you need on marketing, on strategy, on finance. And in my story, you will notice that I will explain that all this knowledge, it's very good, I think. But when you run your business, a lot is about you, no? And it's your personal journey. Lots of knowledge is not necessarily, let's say, reflects in big success. So then after those studies, I worked for renewable energy business. I was 7 years in business development for renewable energy projects, big projects in Asia, where we tried to help the environment, get green energy and sell this energy to the grid. And then again, I did lots of business development, lots of sales, working with local distributors. And basically through all my experience in these two industries, and I think I have around maybe 15 years of work experience, one of my main conclusions is that it's also a big part of any business, it's about people. And so some companies, they manage to collect professional professional people and run it. And make these people work together into the common goal, and some companies do not manage to do it. And let's say my second working experience in the renewable energy business, I went through one bankruptcy and 2 takeovers and mergers. So, and we were talking about big companies, one big company going bankrupt, being taken over by others, mergers. So again, seeing lots of things happen in the business and realizing that it's at the end, it's about people making decisions, and people making some good decisions and some bad decisions, and affecting lots of other people with them. No. So that's kind of a background. And basically, I stopped working for companies when my daughter was born, because I was not willing to travel extensively anymore. I was traveling through Asia at that moment. I wanted to stay at home and be with my kids. And from staying at home for some years, I developed new interest in education. And I decided to put this new interest also connected with the need I noticed. I noticed that there was not really an offer of business education for kids, that schools don't teach anything about finance and business to kids. So I said, okay, then I will try to do something about it. No? So if nobody is doing, then I will try to do something about it. And very quickly I started inviting kids at home first. and just doing classes at home. Then I started doing it online, and that way I developed my own program to teach kids business, finance, and economics. And I've been doing it for more than 3 years now. And I made to certain, I see it more as a very interesting learning journey. I moved a lot from what I thought was in the beginning. I learned a lot. I also realized that some things which I thought I would like doing, I don't like doing so much. So it was very interesting personal journey for me, understanding what I like doing, what I don't like doing. And based on that, I'm readjusting things I'm doing. I'm making more transfer to teaching adults and focusing actually on adults and specifically on women. And in parallel, looking how I can take what I built with the children program and maybe scale it somehow and maybe, let's say, repackage it, that it's still what I built is maintained and grow and is growing, but not as, let's say, a traditional business, maybe as often an academy, because, for example, I realized that I don't want to run an academy and have lots of teachers, not to have lots of students, lots of teachers. I don't want to do it. I also realized certain things because I was working a lot with schools, so I kind of understand what works well and what not, and make my choices if I want to do it. And basically, yeah, so I made a conclusion. So this is not exactly the business and industry. I see a huge potential to scale, and I see myself doing it, let's say, in a traditional way. So I'm now kind of trying to find another way to, let's say, to use something what I built, but also out of that came something which I think I'm more fond of doing, and I see more potential to scale a business, and also maybe more personal satisfaction as a person. So that's basically what I was trying to say. So where I am now, no? So I'm kind of starting a new startup, more or less. Also based on everything what I kind of say, like, okay, so what I've done with that one, I'm not doing it this time. I'm doing this now better, faster, different, whatever. So, and also I think as a person, I'm probably because of the old experience of, let's say, hardship I saw and failures and bankruptcies I saw in the past, I'm very, very cautious to, let's say, if I do something, it's because I really feel that it should be successful. And if not, I just try a little bit, I see, but I'm very cautious and thinking a lot strategically and trying to understand if what I do, it makes sense strategically, checking lots of numbers. And for me, lots of numbers just don't make sense. No? So I kind of, and that I want to talk about actually. So I will start sharing more. So I will share what I believe. So keys to a successful start. No, nobody sees it, no, because I'm not sharing my screen, am I? Wait. Okay, so my first advice to everyone is start with sales as soon as possible. And if I could make the rules, I would like prohibit people to talk about business before they went out and sold something. And it has to be like a real hard sales experience. No, just, I don't know, go stand on the street and try to sell ice creams. No, maybe it sounds stupid, but really, you have to make a sale. And basically whatever you are doing there, whatever product or service you're offering, somehow before you put lots of time and money, it has to be sold, and there should be somebody found who is ready to pay money for it. And so this is one thing. So you have to try to sell something. And your product and service, you have to understand that somebody will be buying it. Because we get as entrepreneurs, no, as owners of the business, we get very excited and in love with what we do. We overestimate importance of this whole thing for people. We kind of and we are, lots of us, we are really solving a problem. We are really offering something unique. We are doing wonderful things, but we have to see it from a perspective of the other people who are, somebody is supposed to go and pay money for it. And so this person has to be found as early as possible. So it can be on paper, it doesn't have to be the real product, but the pre-sale has to be done. And then I don't know. I'm trying to go through my presentation, but something is not working. I'm sorry. And then as long as we start making some sales, or we have some potential customers, but it has to be real people, not our friends, not somebody else who just advises us. It has to be real paying customers. It's very important to talk to them and understand how do they see the value in our product. Because I also realize that some people buy our product or buy our service, but they pay us money, so we are happy. But it's not necessarily that they see the same value that we give a value to the product. So some things they value more, some things they value less. Something is for them more important that we believe. So it's very important to talk to them and understand. And for me, it was simple business, the education for kids, but for me it was very eye-opening talking to parents and understanding, let's say, what they see in my course, also why they pay for this course, what is their decision process, and I would never be able to come up with it myself. And I realized that the more you talk to people, also it gives you much more information to adjust your product. Especially, it's very important to understand how to sell it, to understand their decision process, their relation to price, how they see the competition, and it's amazing. And lots of things, because at the end, when we sell something to whoever, and we are competing for the limited amount of money, but we only see our direct competition, and we kind of always benchmark ourselves with the direct competition, with what we see as a direct competition. But then amount of money is limited, so this money, so you might be competing with something completely different for the money of the consumer or customer. It doesn't matter whether you sell to a company, whether you sell to a person. Once you talk to them and you really understand how they made their decision, some things you find out that they're amazing. So basically, I offer business classes for kids, So I only kind of think like, okay, so then there is no other similar offer, so so there is no benchmark, but at the end I compete for the time of kids and money of the parents, and they compare me maybe with the classes of ballet. Yeah, which for me is not so logical, but at the end it's like this because they have limited amount of time and they have limited amount of money. So if they decide to go to my course, then they have to skip going to something else. And the same also if we sell to big companies, just talking to the buyer, just talking to somebody who will be deciding to pay you the money and understanding how they decide, it changes everything. People have their budget restrictions, they have their, let's say, mental ideas about the price. They compare something, they see your product, especially with innovative product, because what I was offering from one side was very innovative, because when I started, there were no live online classes for kids. So it was something very new. So if it's something new, it's more difficult to explain the value of it and for people to understand it. So something which you might see as an extra, they might see it very negatively. So just talking to people, and in my case, it was asking them for advice. I always, so with all my clients, potential clients or existing clients, I go and talk to them very openly, and I ask them questions like, how do you decide? Which prices do you pay? How do you decide on the price? What do you think as a competition? So I basically ask them any questions without, let's say, embarrassing, because I ask them for advice, and people love give you advice. So for me, it was very, very useful. And also, it also creates a connection, and people are very open afterwards to help. And then a key to successful start for me is you have to go think about selling business to business, let's say selling something in big volumes, about synergies and about collaborations. And the last one is also you have to be prepared to knock on doors, to call people physically on the phone, to reach out and to have real human interactions. And for me, the main point, I think, and I talk to everyone in social media, and let's say internet, they brought us lots of advantages. So we are very excited about these advantages, but it's still a people business, and it's still people who are buying our product. And if we want to sell something person by person, it's lots of work. It's still so, because nowadays everybody talks about clicks, click-through rates and funnels, but at the end we are talking, if we are selling to consumers, we are selling person by person. And so if you sell something very small at a small price, you have to get really huge numbers of people buying your product or reading something or whatever. There are millions of people you need to reach. And it has to be, so there are other ways to make certain collaborations, to go through other companies who are already doing it, but going, let's say, to final consumer, person by person, it's lots of work. And it seems like now, if we're on Facebook, so many people will see your advertising, and then yeah, but if you're on television, also lots of people see your advertising, but we don't go and advertise on TV. Because why? Because it's very expensive, And it's still if somebody saw you on TV, still doesn't mean that this person will buy something from you. And with social media, there is lots of talk about that people buy on social media, that it's easier. It's still not easy. It depends on the industry. Not everybody there buying all the time. And it's still person by person. They have to be ready to pay real money for your product. So sometimes it's worth much more to sign a big agreement and somebody selling for you as a big contract. Sometimes you have to. So I think was human contacts with other companies, contracts when somebody is doing for you a big deal in one time is very, very important. And it's and Facebook advertising, sales through internet. There are certain segments where there is like purchase on emotion. I don't know. There are products. There's a certain amount of people who are there and they see something and they buy it immediately. But in real life, if you look at yourself, how many, let's say, purchases you make without thinking because you came across something and you immediately bought something? Not so much. Lots of purchases are still because somebody recommended you, because you trust the company, you trust the name, because you made your research. So it's still a long process, and you have to be there physically selling your product. Let me see, because I received the. Okay. If anybody has questions at this moment, I'm happy to answer. And if not, I will continue, let's say, talking. Mafia?
Yes. Hi, Lena. I had a question about selling B2B. You mentioned collaborations as a way of selling B2B. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a bit.
Well, I mean, that's why you have to, we have to understand very well who is our consumer. Yeah, and who is our consumer? We have to imagine these people. We have to understand how they make decisions, and when they buy this product, and why they buy this product. And people normally make certain decisions in a certain moment. Again, not so many things we buy spontaneously. So, for example, very easy again, in my case, selling business classes for kids. So if I talk to parents well enough to understand, then they actually decide on classes for kids once a year before September. Yeah, so potentially, yes, potentially somebody could came across my advertising for my course on Facebook, and like it so much that buy it on the spot. But in general, kids, for example, all the activities are being planned a year in advance. And parents sign them up to ballet classes, to math classes, to robotics, everything for the whole year. So I have at the end, I have a very narrow window of purchasing moment when they do it. They do it normally a year before already. They kind of know what they want, so they start searching. When they search, at the end, they don't actually search so much on Google. They talk to other parents from their class. Yeah, and lots of things, they expect information to come from school. So basically, and they decide because another mom recommended, because the school recommended, and very seldomly they search for on Google. So if I know that, so for me, it makes much more sense go and make agreement with one school who will start recommending me to, let's say, all parents in that school. And though potentially, let's say the world is open for me, no, I can sell to people in the United States. I can sell it. I mean, I can sell to everyone from internet, from Facebook and everything. But it makes more sense to sell maybe to one chain of big schools, and that's it. And for me, let's say, understanding this, no, start calling to the big schools. Also because of the type of school, I can profile my consumers much better. No, by language, by what kind of parents they are, what are they interested. So instead of, let's say, throwing lots of money on Facebook, it makes more sense to me to talk to many schools and try to sign one agreement with a chain of schools. And that would be, I think that would be for any other product. No, whether I sell small things or big things, there is already somebody who is selling to your consumers. You have to understand when your consumer decides on this something. There is usually a budget. No, there is usually a decision process, and they compare you with somebody. They make the decision at a certain moment. They trust certain sources. And that's it. And if they really want it, they go on Google and they search on Google, and you have to be there on the first page. And also what they search on Google is not necessarily something which actually you thought they would be searching. Yeah, so in my case, again, super innovative business classes for kids. Nobody is looking for business classes for kids. Yeah, so so the chance that they will come across something is it's very, very rare. So it makes more sense that I have to go and meet the schools, meet the parents in big volumes, and talk to them, and then make a sale. And that would be with anything. Yeah, Andres?
Yes, very interesting. If I understand correctly, Lena, you are referring to sales, not only to the, let's say, to the strategy to actually sell your product, but also to identify the potential buyers, maybe, because, for example, we are at Cool Track, our project. At that moment, we are not selling in the sense that at this moment we are not offering a product with a price to be bought, but we are interviewing the actors of the sector we want to target in order to identify the potential buyer and finalize the definition of the product based on those interviews, that information we are collecting. No? Mm-hmm. So it is not properly sales as such, because we are not still selling the product, but we are trying to find the potential buyer. No? And this is the first step. No? You were referring to the first step to start a business. Yeah. No? So for us, that's like mandatory, because we need to understand better the sector we are targeting first. No, so I don't know if it is with that approach.
No, I think it's that approach, and I think with your case, I mean, I know a little bit your case. So basically, you theoretically, if you get an opportunity to talk somebody from the industry, you don't have to have a product, but you could say, if I would have this product, no, if it would look like this, would you buy it? And usually people are very open to say, yes, okay. So how much would you pay for this? Would you pay one time? Would you pay per something? What is and usually with buyers, because I have lots of experience with, let's say, big buyers. Big buyers have their budgets, they have their deadlines, they have their limitations, and they are very open explaining all this, because buyers, they are interested to buy. And I think that's kind of, we are all kind of afraid of these negotiations in a way, We think that if we tell too much, then people will not tell us. I don't know why we think people will lie, or they will really try and negotiate. But normally buyers, they are not, I mean, at the moment you really will have to sign the contract, yes, they will try to, let's say, squeeze the last cent. But when you talk to them, they will be very open. They will say, look, normally per year, I have the budget for things like this, which is maximum so much, and I have to divide it between, I don't know how many projects. They give you lots and lots of information. Also, they can say, look, my decision power goes above this level of transaction. If I go above this, then it has to go through the board of directors, which for you is very interesting to understand. So people, if you ask them the right questions, they answer a lot. Also because they are interested. Everybody is interested to have a good product and to have it at the right price. So it's not about, let's say, I will not tell you anything because if I don't tell you anything, you will sell it to me for free. No, they actually, it's much more open. And nowadays, all negotiations are very open. And also in lots of industries, nowadays, all the profit margins are very transparent. And everybody is very open to negotiate and to share it equally. But everybody nowadays understands that in the long term, everybody should make money. And that there are no margins of 500%. Everybody knows that margins are reasonable, that they are very able to divide it. And that actually happened when I was selling beer. When we started, we blindly negotiated. So we said like, okay, I sell you this container for so much money. They tell us no, a little bit less. So it was blind negotiation. 10 years later, we knew exactly how much our bottle would cost in the supermarket in Argentina. And we would know how much supermarket earns on that bottle. And we would calculate back through all the players. And we knew exactly how much we were supposed to sell for our product to be there or at a certain price. And it was all transparent and there was no negotiation. So we were sitting with all distributors, looking through the prices and seeing if it makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. And the same, I think, with most of the things, also with any consumers also, if it's reasonable people, they explain you very clear how they make their decision, what they are ready to pay for the product and why. So I'm going to the second part of mistakes. Now, so what I found, my advice about the business is also to just see it as a journey. No, it's so what I want to make with this. So it's we learn a lot. So maybe the first thing doesn't work out, but you learn a lot. So the second thing will be better. And I think it's important also to see this as a perspective that with everything we do, we learn. So then mistakes to avoid. I think it's important not to underestimate the hardship of running a business. And I think it's like when we look at social media nowadays, especially when it started. You remember everybody, you only saw the nice pictures of your friends. Now they all went on vacation, they had beautifully looking families. So you see only very nice picture. And in my view nowadays, we see lots of nice stories of entrepreneurship. But as we didn't see pictures of our friends' divorces, and all the other, let's say, nasty things which is happening, you don't see it. You see it only when you start talking to your friends. And then they start telling you that they are sick and that their parents, they are sick, and there are lots of things. But you look at pictures, it looks really wonderful. And the same, I think, within entrepreneurship, there are lots of success stories which we see, but that we don't hear the stories of the hardship, how tough it is, and also how, in my view, how this personal journey is very difficult. It's sometimes, I think, being sold that, I mean, there are lots of advantages in a way, but with all these advantages come certain disadvantages. No? So I just I wrote down some which I would like to share. So, for example, with entrepreneurship, we get freedom and independence. No? And that's one of the advantages, now that we don't want to work for a boss, but we work for ourselves. No? We are independent, we have all our freedom. But with all this freedom and independence, you have to be a leader, you have to be self-disciplined, and you have all these options and all the decisions which you have to make. And you have responsibility. You have a responsibility for the decisions you make. And I think it's not for everyone, and it's hard. So it is it's much easier to be in the company because in the company everything is very structured. You have the purpose, you have your job description, you have your place in organization. The world is much more clear. Yes, you have your frustrations, but it's in a way it's an easier frustration because you can complain about other people. You always can complain about your boss and your colleagues and somebody else who made the wrong decision. But when it's your own business, you only have yourself, and you have yourself to motivate you. You have yourself to blame for things which go wrong. You have yourself to, let's say, to wake up in the morning and decide what you have to do, and you have all these hats to run. Hats which you have on your head, which in the company it was very clear what you were doing. With your own business, you can start with sales or with marketing or with operations, with whatever. So it's only you, and you never stop thinking about it. With a job, you could you leave your office or you close your laptop, and it's kind of stayed there. With your business, it's always with you. And for me, that's I think with the entrepreneurship journey, it's all about you and how you feel with yourself. And I personally don't hear enough about this, and how hard it is, and how it's really not for everyone. Just being with yourself and pushing yourself to begin with. And as you become successful, then you have much more people you're responsible for, people who trust you, people you made certain promises. It's only getting harder, actually. So the famous success story of getting money from investors, it's much more responsibility. Now it's already somebody who you really have to report to. It's in a way, it could be similar to just having a job. So so that's about the hardship. Then another thing I would like to advise is avoiding is outsourcing before building your own knowledge and understanding. Because when I started, obviously some things you are better with and some things you are less good at. So just to give a simple example, when I started, I had no idea about anything IT related. And I would say that, well, I'm not an IT person. No, so I will just find somebody who will do all the, I call it IT stuff. No, so website, I just will find somebody who will build me a website. and obviously you find lots of people who are able to do it for you. But it's the same, I think, with like building a house, no, or doing reforms in your own house. It's very naive to think that you just can tell somebody, well, please build me a house. No, or please, can you please reform my apartment? No, you have to actually to be very, very concrete with what kind of house you want it to be. And actually people who really get good houses built, they spend there the whole day looking at it and correcting and really understanding how this house is being built. And in many cases, if you don't do it, you really end up spending lots of money and not getting what you want. So the same is with anything IT related. Whether it's your website or your platform or something. So you have first to really understand how it works, build your knowledge. You really have to be pretty much specialized in it before asking somebody to outsource. And there are ways to do it. So you can do it, try doing it by trying doing it yourself or reading a lot, but it's impossible to say just, well, somebody will do it for me. I meet lots of people who say, well, I'm not a number person, so I will just have an accountant. Well, that's for me like the biggest mistake you can make, because numbers, businesses are about numbers and finance, and only you should be able as the owner of the business to run this. And so if you're not a number person, well, you become a number person or you don't even start a business. But that's one thing which is essential. So pretty much nothing can be really outsourced unless you really understand and able to make a perfect briefing and explaining what is it about. Well, looking for perfection, that's another thing. So it's impossible to look for perfection because you have to do lots of things. So you have to be very quick. You have to very quickly to say, well, this is good enough. So forget perfection, but you have to understand what is happening. Then listen to the wrong advice, and that goes again because you're by yourself. It's very tempting to go and ask for advice and to have mentors and to have coaches, and your friends advise you and your family advises you. So there is really lots of advice, and it's very easy to get carried away, I think, by this wrong advice is not with a bad intention, but lots of advice is not helpful. At least I found it that it can distract you. Also, people have different perspective. So I'm very careful nowadays to ask for advice. I try to understand, is this so people for me, I put them in certain categories and I listen to advice based on, let's say, what is the category of a person. Now, if it's a potential customer, well, that's one thing. No, so I will listen for potential customers, but then I'm very careful to understand if this is a really potential customer or somebody who just wants to give an opinion. No, so and it's pretty easy not to say, okay, wait, have you ever bought a course for a child? Do you have children? No. Okay, so please, no. Or if you're an entrepreneur and you give me advice on this, okay, what exactly have you done as an entrepreneur? What is your approach? Because everyone has different views. So I try to split advices into categories and to understand exactly what is, and also what happens is very often I go and ask for advice, but I look for something very concrete, and people start giving you, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Well, you should go do this. And so nowadays I'm also very clear to kind of, especially if it's my friends or I don't know, family or something, to say, I'm sorry, if I want to brainstorm, I will ask for, let's do a brainstorming. But now I just ask you like this, I wanted to know if you like, I don't know, this advertisement or not. Do you like it? or you don't like it. Please don't tell me that I should do it completely different. Please don't tell me that it shouldn't be an advertisement. No, my question was very concrete. I would really appreciate a concrete answer. And then another one is spending too much money in the beginning, and what I put in the brackets is on wrong things. Again, it goes back that first has to be sold. And I noticed, and I did it myself, so people kind of, it's very scary to go and sell. It's very scary to go and talk to people and be really out there offering something. So it's very tempting to prepare for that sale, no? And spend money on the perfect website, on a perfect brochure, on a perfect video, so nowadays everything in a way looks very beautiful. Everybody has fantastic educational videos or explanational videos. Everything looks really, really nice. So you end up spending lots of money doing something, but you actually didn't go selling, so you actually don't understand what the consumer wants. And once you start doing it, you realize that what you've done and spend money on is actually not as important, because actually the consumer thinks completely different. So for me, again, before doing all this, it's really possible to go and talk to people with a piece of paper and with an idea, and ask for some of their views and opinions. Just a simple PowerPoint is enough explaining your views. Nobody really cares so much about the brand name and the slogan and the images. I mean, it's nice, but if you can do it in a short amount of time and money, that's fine. But if you really spend a year doing all this and making it beautiful, and you never sold anything and never talked to any potential customer, it's really a waste of energy. Then what I said, avoid looking at numbers, so that's also comes. So basically, to start a business, it takes much longer time than we think. It takes much more money than we think. So money is scarce, time is scarce, and from the beginning they have to be monitored, and it has to start bringing some sales. Or they could be done even pre-contracts. There are lots of ways to sell without having anything. And it has to be done, and the numbers are there to monitor everything what you do, because that's the scarcest resource. Hide behind technology. Goes again that nowadays there are lots of beautiful technological solutions for lots of things, but and also there are lots of kind of a way when we do something and we think that it will change the world, but at the end it's all about people. And people buying something and spending money on something, and that has to be understood very well. So I have a feeling that everybody nowadays talk, well, there are so many apps, but how many apps do people really buy? No, how many, let's say we download lots of apps, maybe. How many apps did we personally buy? How many subscriptions do we have? How many real sales we have? So we have our limited budget, and we spend this budget every month, and we switch a little bit, but people don't have unlimited amount of resources. Companies don't have limited amounts of resources. So the new solution has to bring something extremely different that people are ready to pay for it. And if it's not, then they're not going to pay for it. And then in the long term, it is not working. And so the last one for me also, we don't believe in miracles. No, so have to realize that there should be people who will be paying for this product and for this service. And so this what the image. So we talk about real people and we talk about real money. And it has to be very clear. So whatever we offer and how much money we want to earn, what kind of people are going to pay us, how much, and how many of them. So it's not about likes and it's not about clicks. It's about real people buying something what we offer. So how many are there this and where are these people and how and when are they going to buy it? So that's let's say the second part about the mistakes. I don't know if there are more questions. No. Okay. Well, and then very quickly about educational business. I will. I won't talk so much because I think I talked already too much today. So basically, educational industry, it was a new industry for me. I found out that it's a very competitive industry with big, strong players. It looks a little bit like an old-fashioned industry. But if we talk about schools or talk about education, now it's very competitive. There are lots of things happening nowadays. And we have big players like Google and others with lots of deep pockets doing it. So it's, and still the amount people spend on education is limited. And I don't think it's really increased considerably. There is complex decision process. Actually, it is really complex, and that from the beginning I underestimated. With lots of things, when we talk about child education, we have, let's say, a double decision process because these are kids and parents who decide. If we talk about schools, then schools decide, and school is a very interesting organization which you have to understand, and the purchasing process in this organization is very complex. Also, it's an old-fashioned industry, and it's not easy to change. And then I think one should ask themselves, like, are you the one who is going to really change the system? Because we can try, but you have to have lots of power to do it. Also in education, what exactly is your product? Because there are lots of things there. So there is really content. No, there are different. It could be a platform. It could be methodology. So it's all brings to a certain result that somebody is learning, but there are lots of different solutions. And finally, and that I think it goes for any product, not only for education, but are you offering a pill or a vitamin? And here, this I'm not inventing. I heard it from somebody, and I think lots of people talk about it, but I think it works for every business. So then there are things which are nice to, and people like them, but they are not ready to pay money for it. And then there is, when people are really sick, then they really want to pay money because they really need a solution. So the same goes for lots of products and lots of industries. So people might have a real problem and you really solve this problem and then they are really ready to pay the money. Or it's something which is nice to, and then you're always in the last place for money, for the real order or for something. And so the few of the businesses are able to solve a real problem and start really getting money. And then there are lots of businesses which just offer something and they happen to be in your face, and maybe once in a while you buy, but this is not consistent. And then somebody else comes and does something slightly more attractive, and then it goes further. And I think we also see lots of businesses which exist for a very short period of time, which had their own very short success, but we see them at that moment when they look successful, but then later on they disappear, but we don't track it, so we don't know what really happened. And that's basically what I wanted to talk about today. And so these are my two initiatives, which I suggest you might have a look. One is for kids, and the other one is for women. I'm thankful that you came in to listen to me today, and I hope somebody else will watch the recording.
Thank you so much, Lena. This was so interesting, and thank you for making it so practical and sharing your own experience. I personally learned a whole lot. I really like when you said that you don't start your business until you have started selling, you have sold business, because as entrepreneurs, we tend to have these big ideas and we think everyone is going to love our ideas and our products. But as you said, you have to try selling, you have to talk to potential customers before you build your business. And I think that is super interesting. I don't know if anyone else has a question before we go. If you have a question, a comment, an insight, you can feel free to talk.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would have a last question. You mentioned, Lena, before that you saw a lot of small distributors during your experience with the brewing company, to disappear, no? To fail in their business. Among the mistakes you have identified, what would you think it was the most important one for these companies in particular?
Well, basically it was simple arithmetic of cash flow calculation. Because
so numbers, no?
Yeah, because the moment you grow, you prepay something, no? So you buy a product which you sell to somebody. So you buy it, you pay in advance, then you put it on sale, but it takes you maybe 3-4 months to collect money. So with every time you grow, so this gap becomes bigger and bigger. So you have to have lots of money coming in, helping you to grow. And that's a basic, let's say, cash flow thing. And it might be here, it was very simple. They were buying product and selling product. So prepaying product and waiting for the product to be sold further. No, they would prepay our beer from abroad, then distribute it and collect then from the smaller shops. But it can also be, but also they have to pay salaries for their employees. No, the more you want to grow, you have to prepay salaries to employees, and your sales might be coming through, especially depending on the market. People always pay you 3-4 months later, maybe. And that only when you start selling, then you realize that you receive, then also the moment you sign a contract, and the moment when you really receive cash, it can be up to half a year. So if you prepay something, then there is lots of time. You need money. You didn't get paid, and then when the moment you grow, this difference grows like this. And so for many businesses, it is success which kills them because they don't have cash. But also, let's say banks don't finance it. Yeah, so nobody really wants to finance it. So and it's kind of the thing that we hear a lot about investors putting money and everything, but getting cash for businesses to grow actually is a big problem. It's not so easy to find this cash. So if you grow too fast, you run out of cash and you go bankrupt. And also every time you just go to investor, well, then you may stay with nothing, no? Because every time investor gives you something, you also lose something, no? So yeah, so pure cash.
I see. Okay. Thank you very much. Very interesting. I liked it a lot.
Great. Thank you, Lena. Thank you for being so generous with your story and with all the information. I'm going to upload the recording in the community, and if you have any other questions, if anyone has any other questions, you can leave it in the community. You can send Lena a message, or you can send it to me, and I'll make sure that she gets it. So I'll add the recording in the community. I believe a lot of people will have to benefit from that. So next week, we'll be bringing another interesting masterclass, and we look forward to seeing all of you and having another interesting session. So thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you so much, Lena. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Andres, Diego, Akshay. Thank you, Afia. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. It was great.
Thank you.
No? Okay.